New York Times Read Along. This is the New York Times Read Along brought to you from a very special place. As you can see, this is not my usual balcony in Manhattan. We're on the other side of the park. We're usually on the Upper West Side. Now we're on the Upper East Side. On the other side of the park, we are at the Museum of the City of New York, a very special venue, and a museum that looks at the past, present, and future of New York City. We're going to give you a chance to see the museum, but as always, to talk about the New York Times and the news of the week as well. This is, as you can see, just a beautiful building here, and we're going to give you a chance to ask questions and share your thoughts about the news this week. Let me just flip the camera and say hi to everyone. Hi, folks. Great to be with you. I've been away for several Sundays, and as usual, our wonderful executive producer, Neil Parekh, has been guest hosting and doing a fantastic job, along with our guest producers, Paula Kiger and Steve Taylor. So thank you to all for watching. Please hit share right now so that your friends and family from around the world can join us. Tell us where you're watching from. I'm trying out this new system here with StreamYard, so we're not just on Facebook Live, we're also on LinkedIn. And so if we're not connected on LinkedIn, I hope you'll connect with us there. And you can share our post, our video on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. But you can watch live on LinkedIn as well as on Facebook. We'd love to hear your feedback. This is much more sophisticated and complicated than anything we've ever done before. And I'm learning a lot and very grateful to Neil and company for making this possible. Also, a big shout out to the Museum of the City of New York and for the team here, led by Whitney Downhauser, the president of the museum, for letting us be here on a Sunday morning before the public is here. We'll give you a taste of the museum in a little bit. Jonathan says, good morning from the East Village. He's groggy. I'm groggy, having been in India and come back just yesterday, but this is so invigorating to be with all of you. Please share your comments. Please hit like, please hit share, and let us get this out to the world. I'm going to now introduce you to my friend and partner in many crimes. This is Steffen Kaplan. Hi, Steffen.
Hey, Sree, how are you? It's good to have you back from India and everywhere else, including the Nobel Prizes.
Yeah, that was amazing. You know, one of the things I learned about the Nobel Prizes is that when you're out there, the weather is so different, the climate's so different that it gets sunset at 2:30, and so that was something that I had to get used to.
Wow, that is amazing. But it is an honor to be here at the Museum of the City of New York. I have much history with this museum and New York City. A born and bred New Yorker. By the way, my handle across the board on social media is Spin It Social. I am a social media and visual strategist, working with many big brands around the world with Sree and other things. And I'm also a former photo editor at the New York Times for many years. So we're going to tie it all together today with our big focus, pardon the pun, but actually it's intended on photography, right, Sree?
Yes, absolutely.
And the reason is that the Museum of the City of New York has two of my photos in its, well, actually 5 of my photos in its permanent archives. And they have 2 photos, one in their Timescapes exhibit, which is narrated by Stanley Tucci on permanent exhibit.
Stanley Tucci.
Yeah, it's a film narrated by him. And also there's one on the wall downstairs, which we'll see from New Year's Eve from 1997. That's part of their permanent exhibit of photographs, along with Bernice Abbott, legendary photographers like her, other people, Jacob Reese and many others. So it's an honor to be here. And my history with the New York Times is I'm a former supervising photo editor there for the wire service. And so we're going to wrap
20 years, right?
And I'm also a Baruch College grad. Shout out to Roz Bernstein, my mentor there, the founder of the Sidney Harmon program there, writer in residency program. And, you know, being a born and bred New Yorker, what better place to hold the read along with me on finally as a guest with Sree at the New York Museum of the City of New York. So we're thrilled to be here.
And we're here just before Christmas and the holiday season.
That's right.
It's Hanukkah and the holiday season. And
Hanukkah, Kwanzaa,
yeah, exactly.
You know, it's a wonderful time of the year to be here. And please, as Sree said, the most important thing, not just liking this post, but sharing it. Sharing it here on LinkedIn and letting your friends, family, and as Sree says, your enemies know.
Yeah.
I never let you off on that one.
Exactly. And also a big thank you to the the museum for letting us be here. And also, please ask questions as you type them in. Neil will share them with us, and we'll also give you a sense of how this is all taking place. This is always on Facebook Live. For 4 years, we've been on Facebook Live. Last week, for the first time, Neil experimented with putting it on LinkedIn, and now we are able to do it in other places as well. This Paula, our producer, says good morning from Tallahassee, a very rainy Tallahassee. It's actually a beautiful,
but probably a lot warmer than here.
Yeah, exactly.
But I have, Neil has been doing such an amazing job with this, with Yardstream, making sure that this
StreamYard.
Excuse me, StreamYard. I apologize. It's cold out and my lips are still frozen, but from last night. But anyway, he's been doing just knocking it out of the park with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so important to get this broadcast out every week.
Yeah, and also just want to thank to our sponsor, the Bombay Shirt Company. I have a shirt that matches the season, as you can see. Very subtle colors.
I went with the turtleneck.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. All right, let's walk over here, and so we can show people Neil at work.
That's right.
And this is Neil Parekh.
With no goatee.
Yeah, no goatee. That's right. So tell us what you're doing and how we're able to be on two platforms at once. We're always on Facebook Live. What are we doing?
Sure. So we're using an app called StreamYard, which we started using just a few weeks ago. You can see the back end here. What's really cool, we can see the comments coming in through Facebook, and I can highlight comments, and they can show on the screen. There's one from Deborah, one from Pradnya.
From Silver Spring.
And our friend Sonny Slaughter, who was a guest when we did the 1619 project back in August. When we're also live streaming both to Facebook and LinkedIn at the same time. But for our friends on LinkedIn, again, we can't see your comments directly, but we will go back to the broadcast there.
So that's
it's a technical issue. StreamYard can't access.
Okay.
But we have various cameras we can use. We have various layouts. We can show other screens. We can share multimedia, which is really cool. It's a whole new world for us.
And you're doing this just off your Surface?
I'm doing off my Surface, yeah. So anyone with a laptop. And what's great is that what this also lets you do is to bring in guests. Before with Facebook, you have to be able to bring in a guest via Facebook Live. They have to be on Facebook. They have to be able to connect. It was cumbersome. With StreamYard, all you need is a link. So Sree is actually using his phone. I'm managing the production, but I brought Sree on as a guest via a cell phone. And you can have multiple guests. You can have up to 6 people on screen at the same time, which is pretty cool. And you can move people in and out. You can have 10 people waiting in the background.
Wow.
And cycle through people if you want to do something like that.
Very, very cool. At this point out, my friend Kim Ironman's new book is out. Eco-Beneficial is her handle on all platforms, and it's called The Pollinator Victory Garden. And we're going to do a New York Times read-along with her at some point in the spring. So we'll be doing that. And Neil, are we ready to get to the paper?
Absolutely.
And Steffen, are you ready? Let's take a look. We'll spend some time here. That's our goal today, is to spend some time at the paper.
Right.
And then we're going to go for a walk, right?
That's right. We're going to go for a walk, and we're going to see several exhibits here. There's one great new photo exhibit that is adding to the collection here, the permanent collection of the Museum of the City of New York. And that is From Chelsea to Sid Vicious. What a title. I love it, right? New York at its core, right? Which is another exhibit here. I'm using that New York at its core because I love it so much.
Yeah, core of the Big Apple.
They have an exhibit called New York at its core. But anyway, so we're going to go through photos in that exhibit. Legendary photographers in there like Bruce Davidson and Helen Levitt and many others. And it's going to be great to go through that and see it. We're going to go through some of the paper. Now, the Decade in Photos was the build-up for this. And we're still going to do the Decade in Photos, but for some reason, we don't have the hard copy section. But we have it online, we have it on our phones, and we're going to show certain photos from that, and we're going to talk about it just a bit. And, one of the photographers I want to talk about is Chris Hondros, which is highlighted in it. And we'll get to the paper now.
Okay, great. And I see a note from my friend Jack Frecker. Very cool, Sree and team. And Jack is an international businessman who has worked around the world, including in India, and employed 100,000 plus people in India at one point. So he's a great guy to know. And thank you all for being here. And please tag your friends, share this with them. We do this every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern, no matter where I am in the world. Either I do it from there or Neil hosts from wherever he is. All right, let's get started. The lead section in the Times, they've gone with a black and white cover.
I know.
This is a flashback to the old days.
Yep.
And when it was all black and white.
Yep.
And when you worked at the Times, it used to be a lot of it was black and white, and they switched to color, and that mattered.
That's right.
A new missile test brews as Trump fails to sway Kim. They've had this bromance for a long time that's now turned, and it keeps going in various directions. Republican Party under Trump offers two options: all in or out. And I have a Twitter thread that I run called #BecauseOfCourse. And this would fit right into because of course.
That's right.
Barred by U.S., migrants suffer in violent limbo along border. A really big problem, the issue of refugees and migrants and how they are responding to what's happening there, the administration's response, as well as the Mexican government's response.
It's so devastating to read about these migrants and everything else that's going on, across the world, let alone here. This is a very incredible front page with that black and white photo leading it off. It's so dramatic.
Absolutely.
And Doug Mills, by the way, which we're talking about photography here, is the photographer. Doug Mills is probably one of the top photographers out there covering Washington and many other events in the past. He's just, everything Doug does is on point.
So guys, look for Doug's work. And aha moment in poisonings led to Russia. Attack on arms dealer Baird assassins unit. So, by the way, one of the things you hear as I'm stumbling along some of these words is that things that are written for the print reader, sometimes when you read them out loud, it can be a little confusing, especially when I'm on the job.
Okay. But not when you read the poetry.
No. Where Crawdads Sing and Fly Off the Shelves, a debut novel defying gravity at the top of the bestseller list. I've not heard of this. So this is called Where the Crawdads Sing. And this is a novel that is doing really, really well. I'm just looking at Delia Owens. I mean, of course I've heard of it because it's been on the bestseller list, and we read out the bestseller list almost every week, and we've been talking about that. But now there's an article about explaining why it's been so successful and a century of organized chaos.
And that is
we have the sports
NFL section, and Wayne, the art director, Wayne Commodi, we talked last night, me and him briefly, and he wanted us to highlight this because this is an incredible photo here on the front of the sports section for the 100th anniversary of the NFL. I mean, this is like gridiron to the core.
Right. And look at that beautiful,
violent American.
Perfect.
How powerful
Perfect.
is that?
We'll come back to this in a minute. Let's just quickly glance through the rest of the paper on impeachment in your inbox. The impeachment newsletter. There are several of these. I read the Times one as well as the CNN one, which I'm subscribing to, and I encourage others to look at it as well. On this day in history, 249 Red Sail exiled to Soviet Russia. This is a story from 1919.
Wow.
100 years ago, the anarchist Emma Goldman was among 3 women and more than 200 men who were deported to Russia as radicals, guilty by confession of seeking to overthrow American ideals. The Times reported, "I do not consider it a punishment to be deported to Soviet Russia," she was quoted as saying. What an interesting story. You may want to go back and look at the history of that particular part of American history in 2019. And here, Trump lifts threat of tariffs on Brazilian metal. Of course, President Trump and President Bolsonaro are very friendly, and they're kind of mirror images of each other, or kind of carbon copies of each other. For Uyghurs in Turkey, refuge is no longer a given. And that's, again, as the world changes, a rare place in Afghanistan where women feel free to exhale. Oh, a story about a swimming pool in the Amu pool in Kabul. And jump in at any point you see a picture that catches your eye. Also, any teaching moment, as we all think we're photographers now because we have these smartphones.
That's right.
Jump in with anything.
Well, it's very interesting that you say that about the photographers and cell phones, because recently David Burnett, legendary photographer with Contact Press Images and other things, documented the hearings, the impeachment hearings, and he went in with this vintage camera, and he was holding this, I believe it was a 1930s or 1940s big old camera, 4x5 film shooting. Of course, he won't see the pictures for a couple of days. And he made the point that I don't need to rush like that because I'm not going to print the next day. or social media right away.
Right.
And so anyway, it's great to see people still doing classic photography. And we're going to hit on some tintypes that Todd Heisler did for a thing on Willets Point in Queens today too.
Excellent. We'll look at that. In an Indian city alarmed by a gang rape, vigilante justice finds support. This is the old city of Hyderabad in India. An up-and-coming tech hub is next part of this city. It's in southern India. And I've just come back from India where there's been the country has been kind of filled with protests as a new citizenship bill and other measures have brought out millions of people in protest. And so it was fascinating to be there and watch what happened, including the arrest and detention of one of India's most famous historians, Ram Guha, who is an amazing writer. And this would be like arresting Simon Sharma, the American historian for his if he were protesting.
Right. Now, one of the things, this photo is so great because it really captures, I mean, I haven't been to that part of India, but I do know how busy it is there. I've seen many documentaries and other things. I mean, it really captures how tight the streets are, how busy everything is, the hustle and bustle of everything, right?
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, you can speak to that a lot more than I can.
Polish government is pushing legislation to tighten control over judiciary. And a best-selling author of political fiction shifts to a quest for the truth. Writing a novel inspired by the Trump era would lapse into parody, says Richard North Patterson at his Martha's Vineyard home.
I love the way they played this portrait in a nice square format. That's really unusual, actually, for that. So, rather than going 3 columns or whatever, or a tighter, smaller photo like this right here, they laid it out nicely in nice portrait form, so it has sort of a classic look. And portraits are so important when you're talking about a specific person.
And one of the things that beginning photographers, the mistake they make is they try to light everything evenly. And here you're seeing the light on his face like this. And so even if I were doing a photo of you, what makes this stand out is that this part is lit, this part's a little dark, and that's okay.
Right.
And people want it to be uniformly lit, and that's a problem.
That is.
By the way, in the back there is Neil Parekh, our wonderful executive producer. He's working hard using all our new technology. And this is at Spin It Social. Please follow him on all platforms. Steffen Kaplan he does have a name, yes.
Spin It Social.
Spin It Social.
Everybody calls me Mr. Spin It Social now.
Exactly.
But
and please do connect with me. I'm on Twitter at Sree and on Instagram SreeNet and also on LinkedIn. We're live on LinkedIn. It's so exciting.
We are.
Because this is only the second time we've ever done that. So check it out.
It's so important too what you guys are doing with LinkedIn and having to read along, shared on LinkedIn and live streaming on LinkedIn, because it's such you've always said this. It's one of the most underused and unappreciated of the platforms, and it's so powerful. I've gotten much more active on it, and it's an incredible platform to be on.
Yeah, let's all
everybody join LinkedIn
and use it more. I think everyone's on it, but they just don't know how to use it. Let's see what these photos. Yeah,
these by real quick. A family bathing in the Rio Grande.
I'm looking at some of the comments. Did you get the idea to do the read along because of Mayor LaGuardia? Great question from Beth Granger. Beth is a social and digital expert. And thank you for that question. And we're in the Museum of the City of New York. And so it's a good place to remember Mayor LaGuardia. During a newspaper strike, he would read out the comics aloud on the radio. And that's several people have referred to my read-alongs as being reminiscent of that. I wasn't thinking of it consciously when I did it, but I did do it because I love print and I want print to be around for a long time, and I wanted to celebrate it and also test Facebook Live. And so it was 4 years ago when we started, and then Neil joined a couple of years later, and then the whole thing caught fire, and it's been amazing.
You bring up Mayor LaGuardia, and I just want to make a comment about that photo in a second, but you bring up Mayor LaGuardia, and one of my fondest memories of a childhood growing up in Greenwich Village is always walking past this statue on LaGuardia Place. And it just always made me smile. It's this great statue of him like in motion, and he's so proud. He was such a great mayor. He was a people's mayor. So anyway, this photo here is so, it's devastating. We see these constantly, the migrants crossing the rivers and other border crossings, and
in the cold especially.
It's so impactful.
Yeah, even in the South, it can get cool.
That's right.
In the morning. Colleges enter agreement to allow more competition for applicants, answering antitrust accusations from the Justice Department. When a newspaper folds, our community does not know itself. And this is a story about some newspapers that are closing all over the country, and some comments that have come in from the Reader Center. New York Times no longer has the public editor, but does have a Reader Center. And Beth says it's true that many people don't know how to use LinkedIn, and that's why I have a business helping people do that. They are more apprehensive experimenting because it's their career site. Excellent point. And do check out Beth's offerings. And one of the things that I tell people is that if we took even a tenth of the energy we put into all these other platforms into the one professional platform, we would all benefit from it. But we don't do that. Here's Ancestry.com.
Wow, what a big
they're running an ad.
That's a moneymaker right there.
And running a kind of active ad where you makes you do things.
Yeah,
where it makes you do stuff with your pencils. Or
well, the holiday season, big ad space.
Exactly.
Big ad space.
As reporters lose jobs, vital stories go untold. And this is looking at places and journalists that have lost their jobs.
Wow, community journalism, you know, and so many things so important to keep going and everything. Our colleague and friend Carla Baranakis just started her new newsletter. Give a shout out to that.
Yeah, Local Connection newsletter.
Connection.
Please check it out. And Carla's work is incredible, and it really helps local journalists do better local journalism.
Neil might actually have a pro tip I gave her for her recent newsletter.
Oh, good.
That he can throw up there if he
Officials discussed hold on Ukraine aid after Trump spoke to Zelensky, of course, And then I love looking at obits.
You learn so much from them, don't you?
You do. Randy Seuss, 74 co-inventor of the online bulletin.
Wow.
So we have him to credit and blame for a lot of the world today.
Wow.
And Abby Simon, 99, pianist
with a pyrotechnic style.
I had always known I was a pianist, even at only 3 years old, says Mr. Simon. This was a photograph in the 40s. Look
at that.
That's a great photo.
Look at that.
And Trump largely ignores impeachment as he rallies young conservatives.
You know, a shout out to all the photographers and reporters and everybody having to cover this now. All this, I mean, they're running around every day, 24/7, working on these stories. And it's just amazing. Oh, there's the pro tip.
Look at the wonders that you can do with StreamYard. Yeah. Neil is able to bring in a link and show you video or photo of the article that
it's a pro tip that I gave
Carla
for her newsletter on about, you know, looking around everywhere you go. And once you look at something, look at it again, because you never know how you're going to see it in a different way.
And the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State. Police say woman in Iowa ran over 14-year-old girl because she thought she was a Mexican. This story should be on the front page of the New York Times because this is the kind of outrageous behavior that this country is now experiencing and this president has enabled. It is just absolutely outrageous.
That story should be on the front page.
Can you take a photo of this and send it to me, please? Just click a nice tight shot of it. Let's see if there's anything else. Ruth Anderson, 91-year-old electronics music pioneer, and Thomas Elsevier, 76, he's a film scholar and teacher, a love of Hollywood movies, melodramas, weepies, and action films. He was able to make a life of working in and around films or talking about films. This is what I call making your own luck. When people say our friend Asim Chabra, who has been on the read along at Chabs, CHHABS on Twitter, when people hear he just writes about film and programs film and tweets about film all day, they say, oh, you're so lucky. And there's nothing lucky about that. He's used his knowledge, connections, interest, and made this career for himself. And that's what people can do. If you have, in one of the things that's happened in today's world is that expertise matters. And that's a great thing. So let's move on here. We'll very quickly, we also want to do a time check. We have an hour left, little over an hour left, and we've got lots of things to cover. So I'm just going to drop this here for a second, and we're going to go to the Sunday sports section. Usually we don't read the Sunday sports because I find that our audience is very international, and the sports section is filled with Sunday New York Times sports sections filled with local and American sports, which often don't translate well internationally. But this one is about photography, so we're going to do that. We're going to see, we have, Wayne Camadoy, who is one of the print editors or designers at the New York Times. He works on the print section. He is giving a shout out to the art direction of Tim Oliver with. That's awesome. Wayne, thank you so much for watching. Please tag your friends. We want everybody at the New York Times who's online right now to know that we're doing this read along and to celebrate the work that you and your colleagues do. And also a big shout out to our friend Tom Jolly at Tom Jolly, perfect name for the Christmas calendar.
That's right.
And he is the print editor of the New York Times, and we are getting to see his work here
Now,
as well.
You know, with this section, besides that incredible cover that speaks gridiron all the way, you're looking at a photo here by Ernie Sisto, a legendary New York Times photographer. Actually, he took a photo of a fire that's in the Century in Pictures that I have
wow!
over
So
here.
we should look for that when we get a chance. Yeah, that's awesome. And this is all a story. This is all an issue about how the 100th anniversary and what has happened. First year recorded, they had 500,000 people go. Last year, or the record is 18 million people have gone, and shows you something about the value of the different kinds of.
I apologize.
Teams.
It wasn't Ernie Sisto. It was Neil Bonesy. So sorry about that. All right.
And so let's.
But anyway, wow! Look at
these
this.
pictures.
I mean, this is from.
I remember watching this live on TV. The Catch, it's known as, in 1982, the Cowboys versus the 49ers. I was in my friend Manoj's basement, and we were watching the
Catch.
NFC, the Catch.
The Catch, and Frank O'Hara's, the Immaculate Reception.
Yeah, that
Who could ever forget that?
Yeah, I was too young and in Tokyo at the time, so I did not see that.
Was there anybody that doesn't remember the Coke commercial with Mean Joe Green?
Mean Joe Green, that's
with that kid. That kid touched everybody's lives back then, right?
Right. That was the equivalent of a viral.
It was. That would have gone viral these days.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
From pigskin to politics, Woody Johnson, owner of the Jets, is the U.S. ambassador to Britain. Jack Kemp, former congressman. Steve Largent, former congressman. Right. Alan Page, retired associate justice.
Look how interesting this is. They have a little thing on stars that are football stars that have become Hollywood stars. Other things like you said.
Over here they have also
politics.
Baseball is what we used to be. Football is what we have become. That's beautiful. Frank
DeFord. Yeah.
What it's like to have a son risking his body. The very important question about how President Obama has said that if he had sons, he wouldn't let them play football. And he loves football.
I don't let my son play football. He's begged me. Yeah, I won't let him play any football. He's allowed to play soccer and certain things, but no football.
What are we looking at, by the way?
We're looking at beautiful Central Park. And I have to tell you, it's quite a view, and it brings back a lot of memories for this New Yorker, because I went to school up here on 71st Street at the Lycée Français, and I was always in Central Park for our recess and other things, and playing soccer there.
And we're on 103.
It's the crown jewel of New York City.
Exactly.
And Mitchell Silver is the current New York City Parks Commissioner.
That's right. We
grew
met
up
together.
with Mitchell, and you know Mitchell, and he's one of the best parks commissioners the city's had.
Right. You know? And we're on 103 on Fifth Avenue. The Museum of the City of New York. There's a sign right there.
That's right. Museum Mile, right?
Yes, Museum Mile. I worked at the Met, as many of you know, and this was just part of the Museum Mile, but a very important part of the Museum Mile, and maybe the first museum on the Museum Mile. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, considering it was here since 1929, very possible.
1929?
Yeah.
And also first in terms of the mile itself, or the first or last, depending on how you look at the mile. All right, let's move on. Let's look at the travel section. And Neil, let's do a little shout out. Can I come to you?
Yes,
do a little shout out for the travel section and what's about to happen. As many folks know, in the 4 years I've been doing this, we've had travel editors and travel stories and travel writers on the show before, including our friend Monica Drake, who was the first New York Times staffer to be on the New York Times read along. But now we have a very exciting announcement for everybody.
So on January 12th, on Sunday, January 12th, I will be coming up to New York to interview Amy Vership live from her place. She's the travel editor for the New York Times, and I think this is incredible. The 52 places list that the New York Times publishes every year is going to come out that Sunday, and she has agreed to join us on the New York Times read-along that very day. We're also working on getting Seb Modak, who is the 52 Places Traveler from 2019, to join us on that same show. It's going to be incredible, and we'll be live streaming both as we have to Facebook and to LinkedIn that day. Hopefully you can join us.
And I'm so sorry to miss it because I'm going to be back in India on work. But I ask everyone to mark their calendars 8:30 to 10 a.m. Eastern time on January 12th. That's 3 Sundays from today.
Yeah.
And please mark your calendar and please join at Amy Virshup is her Twitter handle, VIRSHUP. And she's the newish editor. She's been travel editor for a year now. And we're really grateful to her for doing this for us. And please, everyone, continue to tag your friends. Tell them that we're doing the read along. And we are just so delighted to do this. Chris Gorman, our pal, says, love these old football photos. Any great sports photo must always, in my mind at least, be compared to Neil Leifer's famous photo of Muhammad Ali towering over Sonny Liston. That's a good point. And by the way, Chris works at the Museum of Folk Art here in New York. And
what a unique job.
Yeah, and Chris, I hope we get to do one of these with you down the road.
I want to give a quick shout out, speaking of sports, to a legendary New York Times photographer that I worked with for many years and just opened my eyes to so much in sports photography and other stuff. Barton Silverman, just what an amazing photographer he was. Google him, look up his old photos. Barton is a legend, and he was an incredible person to work around.
Excellent. Playing Robinson Crusoe, a 300-pound sea turtle and a million stars shining on an unguided journey around the Exuma Islands of the Bahamas by Porter Fox.
That's where I want to be, Sree.
Yeah,
that's where I want. Not on a boat that small, maybe.
Exactly.
In the middle, but
a yacht with
champagne. Yeah, no, but that is just gorgeous.
A dispatch from the land of flight shaming. Worry over blistering summers in Sweden leads a writer to switch modes of transportation. And this is an interesting point. As you mentioned, I'm back from Sweden and the Nobel Prizes, and I was there covering the Nobels, and it was an incredible life highlight to be there. And they are so much more aware of the issues around climate change in places like Sweden. And I learned so much being there. And I hope you'll check out my Twitter thread, or you just search at Sree at Nobel Prize, and you'll see about 50 tweets I did from there, including a very special behind the scenes tour that's on YouTube of the boardroom of the Nobel Prizes that people almost never see. And you can get a special tour of it. Yeah. And so please do check that out. And a couple of other stories here. Let's look at Have Yourself a Merry Little January. Seasonal cheer on the cheap. Take your holiday spirit on the road, but after Christmas. That's really interesting. And the creative hub in the middle of Sweden's capital. This is exactly where I was for a week for the Nobel Prizes, and encourage all of you to go back and give me a chance to kind of reintroduce myself. I'm Sree Srinivasan, and just delighted to be with all of you. Please hit share right now so that your friends and family around the world can join us. Tell us where you're watching from, and we'll get to your questions and comments as Neil is looking through the comments. Here we also see he's put in my LinkedIn and my Instagram and my Twitter. Thank you very much. And we want to hear your feedback. My email is sree@sree.net, SREE@SREE.net. And Neil and I plan to do this for a long time, so we need guest ideas. So if you want to nominate someone to be a guest, or you want to guest yourself, please let us know and reach out to us on social. The hashtag is NYTReadalong. On Twitter, I'm at Sree and at Neil Parekh. And you can also email me, sree@sree.net. And my guest here is Steffen Kaplan.
Hello, everybody. Spin It Social, Steffen Kaplan. And, I just came across this. Look at this. Look at this beautiful card, Learn With Us. The Museum of the City of New York is so into education and teaching young, our youth and families and everything else about many things here. They have a lot of workshops and other things. And, Sree, speaking of education, if I may for a second, I just wanted to announce something here today. It's very exciting. I'm making my next step into teaching, and I'm actually going to be an adjunct professor one day a week at FIT.
Fashion Institute of Technology,
yes, Fashion Institute,
legendary place
here in Manhattan, and I am going to be there teaching social media with a lot of emphasis on apps and visuals, and also the psychosocial aspects of social media, the fundamentals,
And here's a photo of you with our friend.
And the reason I wanted to have that photo up, Neil's wonderful. We were at FIT last year, and I was lecturing a class of Marilyn's who has 3 classes there. And she is the one that connected me there. And now, thanks to her, I'll be an adjunct professor.
Perfect. Congratulations, Professor. You've always taught us all a lot, and now you get to teach a whole new generation.
Thank you, Marilyn.
That's awesome. And Marilyn's awesome. She's a great participant in the read along, and I call her the queen of Staten Island. And maybe it's time we did a read along on Staten Island. I don't know what this is, but it's really scary.
Wow, what is
here.
that? Oh, lizards. They're like
Some kind.
lizards.
Leaping
Iguanas.
Yeah, leaping lizards indeed.
Iguana K.
All right.
I love that. Pigs, lizards.
Okay.
Look at that.
I'm running
Wow, that
away
is
in
a
the other
beautiful
direction.
photo.
And here's more about flight shaming. And idyllic Christmas town celebrates German folk art in Siffen. Not Steffen, look, Siphon.
Oh, siphon. Okay.
Siphon
You know,
in
flight
Germany.
shaming is really something bizarre. People
It's
love
brand
to
new.
get.
It's brand
People
new.
love to get on planes and just shame everybody on a plane.
Yeah. Vacation alchemy turns strangers into friends. That always happens. We meet people. And this is really special. Our friend Sarah Khan, who's on Twitter. She is by Sarah Khan on Twitter. And she has done 36 hours in Kochi, which is a town in the state of Kerala in India, where I'm from. So let me just remind people, this is northern India, this is southern India, and that's Kochi. And Cochin, or formerly known as Cochin, also famous for the Cochin Jews. It had a substantial or reasonably substantial Jewish population at one point, because one of the oldest synagogues in the world outside of the Middle East, or maybe even the oldest outside the Middle East, is in Cochin. Population is moved on, but people still visit Cochin, and you can see all kinds of things here. And what she's done here is Jewish history. And the 16th century Paradesi synagogue, the oldest active synagogue in the British Commonwealth with global influences. So that's so interesting. You can check that out. And so she's done another signature 36 hours. A rich cultural and culinary tapestry defines the colorful port city on the country's southwest coast. And Dunhill says, shout out to Sree. Thank you very much. And my family in Sweden. She's watching in Ramsey, New Jersey.
Ramsey. Oh, yes, Danielle. Yes,
Yeah,
she's my neighbor.
She's
yes,
your neighbor, yeah.
My son is going to help her do dog walking and dog sitting. Too.
Great. Jeanette says your Nobel Prize experience was fascinating. Thank you. It was
our son.
Yeah,
our son. I heard that habit of saying my son sometimes.
Okay. In New Zealand, Nature Unleashed. This is one of the last, if not the last, of the 52 Travelers series. Is that right? Or the 50th, maybe?
New Zealand.
They're not numbering them, which would be an interesting thing to do next year, so we can do that. And so he went, Sebastian Modak went to every place in the 52 places to go.
Right.
And again, a reminder that Amy Vership, the editor of the travel section, is going to be our guest with Neil on January 12th, the Sunday, as we talk about the New York Times travel.
This is really
efforts,
really interesting there, because with it, you have the coastline shot, then you have this wonderful bridge span there, and then you have another road that's going up through the forest, and this other off-road.
That's right. You've got three roads.
You've got three roads leading. I like the way they did that, because even though you would look down, if you take a second and look up, it brings you from these roads right to the coast.
Oh, love it. Love it. Awesome. That is great. Yeah.
Perhaps we should. Do you want to possibly touch from my phone here on the decade in pictures?
Absolutely.
Since we promised,
yes.
A lot of people would be talking about this. So last week, the New York Times had the year in review, the year in pictures. But of course, we're coming to a close, and 2020 is coming. So we're going to just flip through some of these in the decade in pictures. And Joseph Kahn, the managing editor, wrote this great intro. You should read it, everybody.
Got it on the screen.
So
look at that.
So he can just look here.
Neil Parrish.
So one second, Neil. So what is happening? What are people seeing? Are they seeing just the main image, or is also my screen?
He's scrolling
my
through
camera is also visible.
Both of you are visible. You can show Steffen talking.
Okay, and then so I can turn this around. Okay. And
wow, look at that. The power of this new technology.
Yeah,
right?
Let's go like this.
Okay.
All right, there you go. The light is good. All right, there we go. Okay.
Sweet. We're like I'm doing a dance here.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, okay. All right, here we go.
So here we go. I'm going to look at some of these also, so I can find some names on here when they're going through. But they start off. Of course.
1 second. Yeah, just look at how dramatic that is.
That is.
Why don't we follow Neil, and then you can zoom in as needed. So that's
an amazing photo of a rig exploding in the middle of
the Gulf of Mexico.
The Gulf of Mexico. So the type is a little small on here, so pardon me. Editing conflict photos, and of course the photographers working in conflict zones, is so important to acknowledge and talk about and support them. We're going to be coming upon a photo in 2012, I believe, or 2011, that was by Chris Hondros, who passed away.
Let's pause here, and this is a very disturbing photo of, we'll just look at the caption here for a second. We're just going to go up a little bit. And this is from Afghanistan, and it really shows you the human toll of the conflict there. Let's keep going.
Ears and nose cut off.
Yeah,
just devastating.
And here is a photo from Pakistan. An Army Pakistan helicopter set off a scramble for rations as they were delivering food. So you can see people jumped
Obviously,
into a
the
lake.
photographer was on the chopper,
Right.
or something. And here's a photo by Damon Winter. I went through this earlier today and yesterday. Damon Winter is just one of the top photographers out there. He always has been. This photo, I mean, look at this photo inside of one of these huge military planes that carry our troops wherever the conflicts are. Just incredible depth of field and wide angle.
And more conflict photos. Let's
More
keep going. Let's see what
photos,
are
and
the
this
other
is
kinds of
from-
pictures they have here. 2011.
Okay, so right here, this is by, stop on that one for a second if you can, Neil. This is by Chris Hondros. There's the Hondros Fund that's been set up to support educating people about the dangers that photojournalists, I forgot about, we're on camera right there in the corner now, but that educate people about the danger in conflict zones that photojournalists and reporters face. Chris was killed in conflict. The fund's been set up. Everybody should check out the CPJ, the Committee
To Protect Journalists.
And this photo, Chris was a runner-up, I believe, or right in there for a Pulitzer once. And he's just, sad story.
Unforgettable photo.
Unforgettable photo there, right, of the bunker.
This is where the operation to take out Osama bin Laden's taking place.
That's right.
And here we have, let's see what this is. Houses burned in the aftermath of the tsunami.
Yes.
This was the Japanese tsunami and
That
earthquake.
was.
And we thought we had seen the worst tsunami we'd ever see in 2004.
Yep.
And you saw another devastating tsunami
And I
affecting.
edited those photos when they came in
You
for
did?
the wire and everything
Wow.
else from the tsunami back then. And it was one of the hardest things to do is go through all of those photos from devastation like that.
I absolutely believe it. And here are some more pictures coming in, and beautiful photos. I think, Neil, I wish we had planned a whole session just on the photography, because this is so dramatic. And let's pause on this. And Neil, also, if you want to jump in with anything you want us to look at, but this one is really special,
Right, when
scary
Hurricane
photo.
Sandy.
So this is Hurricane Sandy, and I had been at Hershey Park doing a workshop there, and the family was vacationing, and then we knew the hurricane was coming. So on my birthday, we hightailed it out of Hershey, Pennsylvania, came out here to look at this, liked by Mitch Albom. While we're talking here, Mitch Albom is one of my tweets, and I tweeted about Mitch's popularity in India. So that was cute. But anyway, if we can just go back to that photo, I just want to show everyone. This is something we hope we'll never see again in our lives, where you have the bottom half of Manhattan without power. And in all the stories about dystopia and World War III and things when the world changes and loses electricity, this gives you a glimpse of that and what would happen. Our home is further north on Manhattan, and so we had power, but we could see that there wasn't power further down.
And so much was affected. Even, for example, the other museum we'll mention here right now is the New York City Police Museum, which used to be down by Water Street. They house a permanent collection of my 25 photos on the NYPD. Since my mother was one of the first New York City female police officers in 1973 to patrol with the men armed with a gun, I documented the NYPD for 10 years. And basically, that museum, I found out, had to move a lot of its stuff out because the water down there from Hurricane Sandy had come right in on the museum. So, it was pretty incredible that they had to move their whole collection and other things because things could have got destroyed, let alone the devastation to all the people.
Beth says, such memories of the day and the weeks after. And if there were other comments, I'm happy to read them out loud. Why don't we pause and just do some comment reading if you can? Neil's going to pull them up. This is all new technology for me because I've not done this before. Sunny says these photos are amazing and such profound history. Thank you, Sunny. Everyone connect with Sunny Slaughter, incredible woman who is doing such important work. And she joined us as a guest on the on the New York Times read along. And Susan is saying good morning to everybody. Please hit share right now if you're on Facebook. Share this with the world. We do this every Sunday morning, 8:30 to 10 a.m. Eastern time. And we love celebrating print, journalism, the truth. And so please hit share right now. And if you're on LinkedIn, this is only the second time we're on LinkedIn, you can share there as well. You can comment there as well. You can like. All of that helps get the word out on this incredible opportunity for us to tell the story of the New York Times. And Mark Lee says, I came up to New York a few months after Sandy hit New York. It was amazing seeing how Sandy had cleaned up the graffiti and the devastation at the time. So please keep sharing your comments. I will read them all afterwards. And Beth says, you're doing a great job. The great team you have, and all volunteers, by the way. We all do this for free because we love journalism and we love and to teach and share with the world. Nobody gets paid. We'd like to get paid. If you know of anyone who would like to sponsor the work we're doing here, please let us know. And folks have said to me, Steffen, why don't you work with the New York Times? Why don't you work with Facebook? And part of the reason we don't want to is because we want to be independent and be able to critique and say not just positive things about the Times.
Do things the way we want to.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of have this kind of fun thing. We've also done a Toronto Globe and Mail read along this year. It was a big year for the read along. We did the Washington Post read along, and we also did the Record, the Bergen Record.
Shout out to Paul Piner.
Yes, huge shout out.
And
Paula,
next time you're at Tom Jolly's house, I live right near him. I'd like to come by and meet Tom. I haven't, So
and we also did a read along at the New York Times printing plant, which was incredible.
On a weeknight. That was epic.
Yeah, so
I can't believe that you were able to pull that off in that place because it's like a bunker.
All right, and it was very noisy, but it was wonderful.
Let's move on. Let's move.
Shout out to Paula Tiger.
Yes.
That's really important. So Paula, want to thank you so much for your help producing the show. Especially when Sree has been traveling and I've been guest hosting, Paula has stepped up. But now we've actually expanded our read-along production team, not just Paula Tiger, but also Steve Taylor as well. Using this app, using StreamYard, has really changed the way we do our work, so much so that I'm producing from here, from StreamYard. Paula is in Facebook, and Steve Taylor is backing me up on StreamYard and watching LinkedIn. So it takes a village to get this done. So I really want to give a shout out to Team New York Times Read Along.
Yeah, and I want to just add how personally grateful I am that any of this is possible. They took what was a fun, informal thing that I was playing around with and turned it into something real and something that has meaning, not just for me, but for hundreds and thousands of people around the world every Sunday. So thank you to the team. Again, this is all volunteer. We don't make any money from this. We'd like to make money from this one day. But for now, we're just doing this as a labor of love for journalism. At a time when journalists are called the enemy of the people, we are proof that journalism is not the enemy and journalists are not the enemy. All right, let's continue here. One last
shout out to Sree is talking about the idea of if we can get any sponsorship with StreamYard, Sree, and we haven't talked about this. If anyone does want to do an ad in the middle of the broadcast, we can actually do that.
Oh, nice.
Whether it's an image, whether it's a video. So sponsorship might actually be real. We have something to offer people, and we have a huge audience.
And an engaged audience and people around the world. So it's great.
I want to just make that point as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That's the sign of a great executive producer.
Why don't we scroll down to 2013 because we got a whole decade here. Why don't
we're not going to get through all of it.
Let's just flip down to 2013. Okay. And the reason I want to do this, I want to talk about this photo for a minute from the Boston bombing.
Yep.
And I want to segue into the incredible work that many cops do around this country to this day. So this photo here by John Tulmaki of the Boston Globe, just an incredible photo. It went everywhere. It was on Sports Illustrated, if you remember, because it was the marathon and many other things. The Boston Globe was, owned by the New York Times, and they have an incredible staff of photographers. Many have taken buyouts and moved on, but Estras Suarez, John Tulmaki, Stan Grossfeld, so many photographers I've had the chance to edit. Estras is a personal friend of mine, Pulitzer Prize winning photographer. Estras Suarez, you should look him up, amazing photographer. But one of the segues, this photo, looking at it makes me think, we're here because also to talk about photography and New York City history. And for 10 years, like I said, I documented the NYPD. And
so are we going to take a walk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Neil's going to throw up a few photos first.
Okay. All right.
And
so show us how you do it this too, Neil.
Yeah,
sure. So on the back end, I can share my screen. So if you look at the very bottom of the screen, I'm not on camera, but there's me in the corner. This is Shree's cell phone. Steve Taylor is standing up at the moment. Hey, Steve, how you doing? Steve Taylor is lurking in the background.
Shall we add him? Shall we add him? Shall we bring him on?
We could bring him on just to say hi real quick. Why
Okay,
not?
let's see.
So let me stop sharing screen
Okay.
and bring in Steve Taylor.
How easy is that?
And I might bring in myself as well.
So we can
When you're live feed, whoops.
So that's what.
Here we go. Hello. Good morning, everyone. See, I'm here in my my surprise hat onesie. Caught me here in my Sunday morning wear. I'm not currently hearing any other audio there, so I think you're Sree.
Unmute your mic. There you go.
There we go, Steve. I said you're looking good.
Well, thank you. You were muted there temporarily. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm on my Sunday best.
All right. All right.
And thanks, Steve, for all your support.
Really.
It is incredible what you've done to help us all learn and share this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
And
So Neil's going to now use the wonder of technology
the
here.
NYPD pics. Is that
Yeah,
what
flip into some NYPD pics here. So this is my mother in 1973. Was
So you're
the
not
first
picture
partner.
on the camera.
This was taken by Don Hogan Charles, actually. God bless him, he's passed away now. But Don took this photo of my mom, and that's me suiting up with the 6th Precinct when I used to go out and work with them a lot. And this is the photo that is right here in the Museum of the City of New York. That's in the Timescapes film here that they accepted into their permanent archives. This was next door to where I lived. There, I woke up to a 5-alarm fire with a building collapse. I had learned never to be in a collapse zone from this photo. The fireman in the foreground there, Neil, actually dove on top of me when the first part of the building came down and almost hit me. And some bricks and other things covered me up and said, "Kid, don't ever do that again." I learned a lot that day. Emma, in the Pride Parade, a good friend of mine, captured her. This was during the squatters episode in the East Village during the Giuliani years. It was a crazy time. And this was a guy who had robbed a pizza parlor on Christopher Street. Now, a quick mention here of James Zadroga here in the corner on the right, who the Zadroga Fund is established for 9/11 victims.
Oh, yeah.
That's James Zadroga. It's one of the few photos of him on duty.
I don't need to zoom in
You don't
like
need to
that.
zoom in. This is showing on screen.
So James, God bless you, man. Rest in peace.
And he's the one who
He was
passed
the
away.
one that suffered from all of the
And
effects
John
of
Stewart
9/11.
really
John
fought for
Stewart
him.
fought
Yeah.
for that. So
That's the
James is
Droga
right
Fund.
there.
Yeah.
God
Wow.
bless you, James, and your family.
Okay. Wow.
So, and then I think there's a couple more. This is from before 9/11. Obviously, the World Trade Center is in the background there. The amazing work that ESU does, rescuing people in the Hudson River and other places. That canine
unit.
shot. You got to go back to the dog, Neil.
You can show Steffen's face. He can talk.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
That canine shot. Okay, I got to tell a quick story here because we got to do some storytelling. So I was with Angel Franco at the squatter riots and everything else that went on over there. Angel Franco. And that was the day that changed my life in photography in many ways because Angel saw me with my telephoto lens and said, "Kid, get rid of the telephoto and the zoom lenses. Get an 18 or 24 millimeter lens and go wide and get up close and get to know your subjects." And that changed my life as a photographer because I always shot with wide angle lenses after that and got into the subjects. So thank you.
And that's also the principle we teach in our courses on mobile photography. Get as close as you can. Don't bother with the zoom unless you really need it. Get as close and get up close, and you get better shots.
And a shout out.
Use your feet. Use your feet, not the zoom.
And
I like
shout
that.
out to another legendary photographer who passed away. Everybody knows his name, Dith Pran. Pran was a colleague of mine and a really good friend. God bless him. Very famous.
The Killing Fields
The
work.
Killing Fields after him and his story about his life. Pran was there with us that day, and I learned so much from Angel, Pran, Fred Conrad, all these people. Shout out to all the great New York Times photographers.
And Paula has to leave, but she says she has a commitment with her daughter who lives about an hour away and needs to get on the road. Steve will be toggling between LinkedIn and Facebook because he's a superstar. Many holiday wishes for those celebrating Hanukkah and Christmas. I'm grateful for all of you. And Paula, you're wonderful. Thank you very much. And she wrote a wonderful little article about our community that at some point Neil will share.
So
when he
quick
gets a
more
chance
here,
to
and then
click
we're going
this
to take a look. So Ricky Sarantino here, famous mounted cop, and then ended up in the 6th on the roof. MTV Awards. I really tried to show the life of the NYPD. This was an amazing scene in Harlem, a really devastating scene, actually. But anyway, the woman cop in the middle there, ESU, not very many ESU female cops back then. And shout out to her, Anne Margaret Lyons. And this is the New York 400 book that's a forward by Michael Bloomberg. My photos are in this from the museum here from New Year's Eve and a couple of others. It's an honor to be in this book as well. Sorry, the new technology. I need to look over here as well.
And Mark says, always great seeing you here, Paula. Thank you, Mark.
Yep, thank you, Paula, for all your work. Steve Taylor, thank you for everything. So that's quickly a glimpse at some of the work I did with the NYPD and why we're here at the museum, because one of those photos is, why don't we take a walk?
Yeah, so
why don't we start off quickly here at the museum and go over to...
And we have a colleague from the museum who's going to walk with us. We're not going to put her on camera, but she's also newish to the museum, so she's going to share if there are any questions we have for her. But
so why don't we start with the photo show on 3?
So we're
going to go over here to the staircase.
Okay.
This is probably one of the most amazing places. I love the Museum of the City of New York. We'll come back down to this, the Activists New York.
One second, I want to mention something here. Some of you know that I went to Banff for the first time. Banff is this incredible place in Canada and outside Calgary. And I went to a conference about the arts and transforming of the arts. And one of the things I learned is that everywhere in Canada, especially in progressive events, and by the way, Canada has non-progressive people also, I learned, they do a native acknowledgement, land acknowledgement for every time they start an event. They'll say, we want to acknowledge that we're on the land that originally belonged to this native or indigenous set of people. It's an incredible thing. And I told them that in New York City, where I live, which was originally Native American land, we get none of that, no acknowledgement. So to see this is really important and very special. And I want to say to my friends at the Museum of the City of New York, I'd love to come back and do something just with this exhibition because it's that special. And one of the shames of being a New Yorker today is that we acknowledge so little of the history of how Manhattan got acquired by the white man and everything else that changed with it. So please do come and take a look at this exhibition. I want to come back and hope some of you will too. That's incredible. Let's
we're
go.
Gonna come down the staircase here.
Yeah.
And we're going to go to 3.
Oh, look, even the staircase is
Even
lit up.
photos in the staircase.
Yeah, I love this. One belongs to New York instantly. One belongs to it as much in 5 minutes as in 5 years, says Thomas Wolfe.
Now, I haven't been in this staircase. I swear I haven't, folks.
Right.
How fitting is it that we were just talking about the work on the NYPD that I did, and this guy, I didn't know this was here. It was amazing. Leonard Freed was somebody who was very instrumental, and I collected all his books and work. Very instrumental in giving me some ideas and just a vision towards documenting the NYPD. And look at that great photo of that cop running around with the kids back in the day.
Exactly. And can you take a picture of that for me?
Yes.
Jerry Rubin says,
do it all here, folks.
Every person on the streets of New York is a type. The city's one big theater where everyone is on display. I love that.
Got it.
And E.B. White says, by comparison with other less hectic days, the city's uncomfortable and inconvenient, but New Yorkers temperamentally do not crave comfort and convenience. If they did, they would live elsewhere, says E.B. White. Amazing. And you know E.B. White from Strunk and White, also the author of Charlotte's Web.
Look at that amazing photo right there. That reminds me of one of the photos we'll see upstairs.
This is Grand Central Station, the famous clock.
Richard
Before cell phones,
Yes.
you would just say, meet me at the clock.
Meet me at the clock.
Yeah.
Look at the shadows in that photo.
And here's a Mark Twain quote. Make your mark in New York and you are a made man or woman, of course. Let's keep going here.
This is a real treat, folks, because this has just started yesterday.
Ooh.
So we're going to go straight down to it. It's New York, collecting New York stories from Chelsea to Sid Vicious. And it just opened yesterday. So you're going to get a quick preview of this. And it's basically, they've gotten a lot of new acquisitions into their permanent collection here at the Museum of the City of New York. And we're going to see some of them.
Here's a great comment by Susan. Susan Stein says, this is the Museum of the City of New York. I'm going to have to go. So there you go. We
Absolutely.
This is why we're here.
People in already.
Yeah, 34 institutions that changed New York.
Including
And they've got
the Met.
they've got the Met, where I worked for 3 amazing years. If you haven't seen my hashtag 3MEtYears, #3MEtYears, I hope you will check it out. What an incredible place here. So much to see.
We're going to make a hit. We're going to stop in here, and then we're going to go down there to the census exhibit, which is really important, as we know, census and demographics and all that.
And 2020.
So here's Pride, the Pride Parade. So this, real quick, this room brought back so many memories being a born and bred Greenwich Villager. And I was in the Pride, walking, documenting things back then in the Pride Parade and many other things. And I lived right near Christopher Street and, totally, a Greenwich Village all the way there. So anyway, look at this beautiful exhibit entrance here. Collecting New York Stories, Stuyvesant the Sid Vicious. What a title. So why don't we start from inside? I've only seen this briefly, so we'll go through it fairly quickly because we have a lot to cover.
And we also have to get back downstairs.
And we have to get back downstairs. So let's go through this. But these are all new acquisitions that are going into the archives here at the Museum of the City of New York. And, just so many amazing New York photographs with, taken from back in the days, the Bowery. My God, the memories of the Bowery when you didn't want to walk down the Bowery. It was so, it was devastating to walk through the Bowery at times back in the 70s and other things and other neighborhoods. The Guardian Angels, everybody knows the story about the Guardian Angels and all the patrolling of the streets and subways that they did with Curtis Sliwa, was it, right?
Who I walked behind the other day.
Did you?
Here in New York. One thing that I want to point out that walking when we're doing StreamYard isn't as smooth as it is when you're doing Facebook Live. So I'm going to not slow down. I'm going to slow down, but we still need to keep moving. So
Alan Tannenbaum, very famous photographer, has done a lot of work on New York City. Joe Conzo, shout out to Joe Conzo and Seiz Del Sur and David Gonzalez from the New York Times, who we know well.
And this is Tony Tone and Cool Herc.
I worked at the Roxy. I used to work at the Roxy. I used to perform. I was a disco roller skater there.
Right. And I met your friend Ronaldo, who took a photo of me yesterday for a project.
How amazing is life? He's great. That we bring everybody together all the time. Look at this great photo by Anders Goldfarb. Right. Also part of.
And some great comments coming in. Neil, would you go back a couple of comments to Colleen? She said something really beautiful about the tour that I wanted to share. And Daryl says, should be catching up on sleeping, but this is way too interesting. We have to send our friends Whitney and her team here at the Museum of the City of New York. We have to send them some of these comments so they can see. And also want to say how special it is to be here before the museum opens. Some of you know my work with the Empty Met Tour and how museums are doing this all over the world, but also allowing two New Yorkers to kind of walk through the museum. We have a colleague here, but allowing a user in the terms of Steffen to lead the tour and saying that expertise is not just lie in only one place and opening up your institution. This is the thing that I want all museums to be able to do. And they're not just talking the talk here.
That's right.
We are
walking the walk.
Yeah, there we go.
And we're full of puns too.
Yes.
Now I want to come down here because this right here struck me the other day when I had a sneak preview. These photos here are some of the most incredible street photography by Richard Sandler. And Richard Sandler is just, I took a course with him at ICP. I've only taken 2 courses in my lifetime. One at ICP with him and another with Alan Frame. What a great name for a photography teacher, right? Alan got me started on the NYPD, but Richard also, his style caught me early on, capturing the streets of New York. Look at these women in their fur coats back then. Or this by Van Cleef and Arpels. Is that even still?
I don't know.
I don't know if it's still.
And Twyla says MCNY is undiscovered by most New Yorkers.
Yes.
Also want to do a shout out here. We've been talking about a lot of male photographers.
Yes.
But here's Judith Freidenberg.
That's right.
And here is Jeanette Beckman. So it's very important to acknowledge the work of female photographers as well.
And New York Times female photographers who I worked with. Ruby Washington, I want to give a special shout out, who passed away recently. Ruby was near and dear to all of us. A beautiful woman, a great photographer. Google her, check her work out. Andrea Mohin, Nancy Cecil, Sarah Crowich. I could go down the list. Michelle Agins, you name it. I've worked with them, and they're just all great. And you should Google them and find out more about them. Many have moved on in certain ways. So few are still there. But quickly, this one.
By the way, I just want to say I love pictures of barbershops.
I do too.
And my one of my friends and former students, Tone Johnson, has put together a wonderful exhibition that I think is at BAM and elsewhere, and it's called You Next, and it's about photographing barbershops. And so do check out his work.
So this one photo I want to go back to here because this is probably it's on the cover of his book, Eyes of the City. And Richard Sandler has that new book out. Follow him on Instagram as well, at OSTOP. But anyway.
And also good to remind people that this is what subways used to look
Really?
like in Manhattan. When I arrived here in 1980, this is what a subway looked like. Look how much graffiti, and it's a little different now.
Yes, it is.
Yes, and Twyla says, yes, New York subways look like this.
No, it really did. But look at the focus in the picture. What needs to stand out here is the wide angle, number one, but also how the eyes right here, this gentleman right here looking.
Just make it.
Right, and this gentleman looking at him, this gentleman looking at Richard, and this woman looking straight on at Richard behind the wall. I mean, you can't get a more New York and better transit photo of commuting back in the days. Let me tell you, I have stories.
Right.
But anyway, Jeffrey Henson Scales, one of the editors at the New York Times who put together the Decade in Photos, and has done much work in Harlem and many other communities.
Stacy Kratz says, my favorite photography exhibit at MCNY was the Gordon Parks exhibit, life-changing. To be able to say that about a piece of art or an exhibition is really special.
Look at these beautiful sepia tone photos from Barbara Mensch. I mean, unbelievable, the bridges and everything. That gives you
Speaking of bridges, here are more bridges.
Gives you a whole new perspective of the city when you look at these from above, and everything. So let's go through over here.
And Pace University is here.
That's right.
There's Pace University right there.
That's right. Let's go through over here.
And Marilyn Bridges is the name of the photographer, and she photographs bridges. That's amazing.
What a perfect. So you think that was her calling? You think that was her calling? And then over here, it just continues. Stephen Barker, Gail Thacker, Alan Bear. I want Ashley Gilbertson, a special shout out to Ashley, a phenomenal photographer who's been in many conflict zones. And just an all-around.
And conflict zones don't have to be overseas.
No, they don't. As this shows, this could be right here on Occupy Wall Street.
Laura says, Laura Silverman, our friend and former guest at the New York Times Read Along, says, a non-photographic treasure at the museum is the Florine Stettheimer dollhouse, which we passed upstairs, and maybe we can glance when we go
look at this great photo. Is this amazing or what? Right here by David Carroll of Stilts on 14th Street.
Right.
What a great New York photo.
That's great. And here's Joseph Michael Lopez. And so photographers of all backgrounds, Hiroyuki Ito. Very, very cool stuff. So we're going to keep going.
I was looking for the ones by Bruce Davidson real quick. I don't see them. I'm trying to figure out.
And a shout out to the Boogie Down Bronx.
There are photos here from Bruce Davidson. You should check those out. Legendary Magnum photographer. Anyway, so we're going to move on here now. And let's go quickly down to census over here, because we wanted to quickly point this out because it's a very interactive exhibit. And it's really important to remember, who we are by the numbers. So much is learned
by the way, Staten Island Museum, when I left the New York Times, the Met, the very first event I went to was with you.
That's right.
My first talk was at the Staten Island
Museum.
At the Staten Island Museum.
Right,
and here's so much to see here. Brooklyn Academy of Music.
Brooklyn Academy of Music.
Wave Hill, wonderful. Hill. I went to a wedding there once.
Shout out to El Museo del Barrio. What a wonderful institution that is. And a shout out to the Bronx Documentary Center up in the Bronx that teaches a lot of kids about photography. So it's very important to acknowledge that.
New York City Ballet. So this is a series of institutions that have changed New York. And that's what this
right. And so much funding is involved in all of this, right? You know so much about that.
Yeah.
But here we are, who we are, visualizing New York City by the numbers, very interactive place. If you come over here, you can see they have all these different interactive parts to it. You can pull that out.
So it shows you Asian New York.
Asian New
York. And then you can put in, there's Black New York.
Hispanic.
Right. Very interesting.
That's right. So yeah,
And I love this that it doesn't have to be digital to be a way to tell a story.
That's right.
And get
Some of
people
it's
to connect.
manual.
Yeah, and that works.
And
They have digital also.
We have the digital also, and then of course inside here we have so much more. Why it matters. Why do the numbers matter? You know, thinking about numbers and all of this, and economists, et cetera, et cetera. Sebastião Salgado, one of my favorite photographers in the world, look him up. Sebastião Salgado is a former economist that became an incredible photographer.
Wonderful photographer.
I have all of his books. I have too many photography books. But look at this beautiful display, all digital on the walls here. You know, languages of New York City. Look at that. And it'll show you how many languages there are. So you look at
See the most common languages spoken in each census tract. It's 2 minutes and 11 seconds. I need to come back here, and we need to do this again and work with and recommend everybody, please come back, come visit the museum. If you haven't been here, please come visit. If you've been before, come back, because it's definitely changing, and we all could learn from being here. This is incredible
So now
stuff.
we're going to go down.
It's already 9:45.
Okay,
so
can we make a quick run to the
quick
first,
run and then
down to timescapes?
yeah. Then we need to go back up
Okay.
in the last 15 minutes,
Let's go down.
and we're just going
Let's
to
go down to timescapes real quick.
Right.
Which is down in the basement.
right.
And take these wonderful stairs again.
Yes, I love it.
Who could pass?
I wish every museum would do this with their, they have so much material, their staircase can be a place of exhibition and make it come alive here. And you're seeing so much here. It's really, really good. Okay, we're going down one more.
Going down. Oh, here we go. More great photos on the walls.
New York, like London, seems to be a toilet of all the depravities of human nature, says Thomas Jefferson. Can you give me a photo of that, please? I want to, it's like the internet today, right? We've got that. And we've got our friend taking a photo of all of us taking a photo, which is excellent. And I've been roaming far and wide over this island of Manhattan. Some proportions of its interior have a certain air of rocky sterility, which may impress some imaginations as simply dreary. But to me, it conveys the sublime, says Edgar Allan Poe. Excellent. New York has always been going to hell, so somehow it never gets there. Wonderful. Love that.
That is a great quote.
That is a great quote. Let's get a
I
picture.
have to take a photo of that real quick.
And the other thing that I recommend to all museums is, if you do put quotes up, which people love in exhibitions, make them big and make them a way for people to take pictures of. And that's what they have done here. So thank you to the Museum of the... Okay, and then we're not going to have to rush because we're running out of time. What time does the museum open? What are our hours? 10 to 6 every day. 10 to 6 every day. Every day, 10 to 6, okay. And himself to 2. All right, I think we're back. Are we back in the right place?
Yep.
Okay. Neil, are we back? But you took over when I was gone, or? Okay. Okay. Hi, here.
Wow, just got some exercise.
So Neil, what happens when I lose my signal in regular Facebook Live? When I lose signal, no one sees anything. What happened here?
So in this case, what we're doing, you're the only signal that was broadcasting. So it did freeze momentarily. In the future, what I could have done is actually switch to my camera and taken over the broadcast. One of the things that you need to do when you do that, and we saw that earlier, is we need to coordinate making sure you mute your mic if I'm using my mic on the computer. We had that moment of feedback earlier. Folks who watched earlier broadcast and saw my testing, it's one of the things you need to toggle. If you have the phone next to the computer, you need to make sure you mute your phone and use your computer instead.
Another question, and I don't know if we've noticed this, and maybe someone can tell us, on Facebook Live, when we switch from the front to the back camera, there's a lag and audio disappears for a tenth of a second. Does that happen here? Do you know?
I haven't noticed the lag when you go from the front camera to the back camera, which is really
that's
really
special.
interesting.
That's really.
When you're walking
it still says
around,
froze momentarily.
Let me
so.
take that off. Yeah. you
there you go.
got me on camera. When you were walking around, though, it wasn't as smooth in terms of the movement. It was a little
choppy.
Choppy.
So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Facebook Live is very smooth, relatively speaking.
It is.
Well, we certainly tried to make this as much of a tour as we could. We touched on some great stuff. You know?
And we missed your photograph, but that's okay. People
well,
can find it.
Showed it earlier.
Yeah.
The photo of the Kaplan New Year's Eve that's in the movie and on the wall.
And folks, this service is called StreamYard that we're using, and Neil's playing around with it. And
you know,
it allows us to go to 2 lines at a time, 2 platforms at a time. We could, if we wanted to spend a little more money, we could go to 3. We got a sponsor. We can go to YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at the same time.
You can actually do 5 different platforms at the same time, and you can choose what you want to do. They support Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and what you can do is you can mix and match. If you have 5 different Facebook groups, you can live stream to 5 different groups at the same time.
Oh, wow.
You can do multiple accounts, I think. I've set up the account, but I'm streaming to Sree's Facebook account and Sree's LinkedIn account. It'd be interesting to see whether I can also stream it to my Facebook account at the same time. I think that might be possible.
So if we get a sponsor, we could certainly do things like that and give you credit to all of it. We could give you credit for all of that.
Technology really is, all of the work that we do as digital strategists, as social media strategists, you, I, Neil, and everybody else, all the events we cover, all of the brands, some of the biggest in the world that we've worked with, the Pulitzers, the Pulitzer Prize is covering them live. Is an honor always. It was incredible doing it together. It was incredible doing it last year when I did it. And it's just, anyway, but one of the things that brought us together, Sree, if you remember correctly, was the fact that the internet and everything went down, of course, in Nepal when they had that horrible earthquake. And Donatella Lorch, who was a friend of ours, was there. And I helped Donnie a lot in getting a lot of her stuff out, because when the internet was up and down, I stayed up all times of the night helping her with things. And she was the one that brought us together 7 years ago.
Oh my God.
It was.
Yeah.
And she had said, you got to meet Steffen. And I said, well, I need to meet Sree.
Right.
And the relationship was formed.
Right.
And, that's where all of this brings us all together. And, it's an honor to be here with you today. And at the Museum of the City of New York, talking about photography, talking about New York City. And, and the possibilities that lie ahead for 2020,
Absolutely.
I'm always open to, as a social media strategist, Spin It Social is my handle. I'm always open to many possibilities and a permanent home somewhere even. So the possibilities are always endless in this field.
Absolutely. And here we're looking at the New York Times Magazine. Folks, I love working with Steffen, and I hope you folks who need social media work or help will be in touch with us, because we're always looking to do more and help more institutions shine online.
And a shout out here real quick to the pictures of the Times of the Century from the New York Times, photographs here.
To the Museum of Modern Art.
Yep, but this was also put together, and the effort was led by Mark Bussell, former picture editor at the New York Times and also of the magazine, and now teaches at NYU. And a big shout out, as you're looking at the magazine, who's Sree? Kathy Ryan. Kathy Ryan, who is a legend, has done how much incredible stuff for the magazine.
She's a photo director of photography.
Director of photography.
One of the things we do is we read the New York Times poem out loud,
Right.
and this time they know we're in a rush, so they give us a very small poem. What is Poetry? Part 2 by Jeffrey Thompson. The light that points the way in the fog, the light in the fog that thickens and reveals the fog's cold breath. The Fog as Well by Naomi Shihab Nye is the Young People's Poet Laureate of the Poetry Foundation in Chicago. The interview is with Frances Moore LaPay, on the power of democratic participation. And we hope everyone will vote next year, wherever they are in the world.
Yes.
We also do this.
Mistreating
So Kwame Anthony Appiah, is the ethicist at the New York Times, and we usually have time to kind of read a question, ask and answer. So what do you do when you see a parent mistreating a child?
It depends on what's going on. I mean, listen, the bottom line is that, we always have to be careful not to overstep our boundaries in life. But I think that it's really important to always look at what's going on. Of course, if there's some violence going on, other things, of course, I think something should be said. That's unnecessary. Of course, the abuse of children around everywhere is just, too much. And kids need to be talked to, dealt with properly, and certainly not.
And you're a great father, I know, and your son.
My wife
amazing.
and I work very hard at being great parents with our son, Mr. Man, as we call him online.
And that's a smart thing. You don't name him on social or
let me
digital.
bring that up for a second. So, a really important thing about kids and social media. We'll just tie this in as teachers, as educators, and strategists. My son, I never put him online. He's always from the side or behind, but I've turned it into an art form, and people love it. And he has an alias called Mr. Man. And also, if you ever want to educate your kids about social media, I started an Instagram account, Daisy Bean Life, which is actually an Instagram account for our guinea pigs, because you want to teach them properly. And what better way to teach kids about social media at 12 or 13 than with an Instagram account for your guinea pigs or dogs or cats?
Right, so it's not about them and posting.
You have who? Come on, bring up Tara.
The Tara is her Instagram page, our 4-year-old Beagle mix.
And you were scared of dogs for so long, and look at you now. You're picking her up and walking her out with her like she's your kid.
That's right. She is our kid.
She is your kid.
Yeah. Our kids are going away to college hopefully in 602 days. Nobody's counting.
Not that you're counting.
But not our dog. Our dog hopefully will be with us for a long time.
No doggy college?
No, not yet. Cheap sushi. A letter of recommendation praising cheap sushi. Oh my God.
Connoisseurs. Who wants to eat cheap sushi?
Well, apparently Jonathan Malesic says
dangerous.
Connoisseurs complain that mediocre sushi is ubiquitous. Well, so is Nirvana. So I've got to read that story. Very provocative. Is screen time bad for kids? Depends on many factors, including what you mean by screen time.
So we just set up screen time at our home, where basically now after an hour and a half or so, the iPad and other things shut down.
Oh, good.
Who was it that we had a quick dinner with one night who actually came up with that invention where you can take everything off?
Yeah, it's really important.
Many people out there doing stuff like that. How to cook a pig. Start at this most festive time of the year.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. The case of the angry daughter. Why did my sweet 5-year-old become so stormy when she started kindergarten? Interesting.
Kindergarten year. Right. That flew by.
Look at the design of this.
I can't believe our son is going to be. He's just turned 13.
I can't believe it.
Can you believe it?
No, I knew.
And I can't believe your kids are going to college.
Yeah, well, in 2 years.
Oh, okay.
The long goodbye. A growing home funeral movement believes that families can benefit from tending to and spending time with the bodies of their deceased loved ones.
That's a powerful story.
Yeah, look at this.
Wow, look at these photos.
A Sunday morning, you may not be ready for these pictures.
Speaking about doing a subject like that.
Or you may not be ready for this horrible, horrible man.
Oh, God.
This is Wayne Lapierre, who is the face of the NRA in so many ways. You were going to say about...
I was going to say quickly about what were we talking about?
The funerals?
The funeral documentaries, photographers. Mm-hmm. Everybody out there, has something they're documenting. Go to museums, go to photo exhibits, learn about these photographers and their powerful, impactful work. And, photography brings all of us together, visuals and everything. And that's one thing as a social media strategist, I try to teach brands is how to use visuals better, because they say so much and brands need to use visuals better. Excellent. And that's what we teach them, right?
So we showed...
including video.
Absolutely. We showed some of the deplorables out in the world, but this is a hero. This is New York State Attorney General Letitia James, who's doing incredible work, taking on a lot of the problematic people in the world, especially out of Washington and in New York. And all these puzzles. Are you a puzzle person?
I'm not really. I hate to say it. I used to be. I used to love word searches and many other things, but the New York Times crossword is legendary. I mean, even in the New York Times wire service where I worked for many years, a lot of things had to deal with rights and royalties and other things. And the syndicate of the New York Times syndicates all these things, So the puzzle was always, I remember everybody clamoring for the puzzle every week. Yeah. And of course, the William Sapphire, sorry, my lips froze there for a second, on language column,
very
and
popular.
everything else.
Very
for
popular.
years. So much history at the New York Times.
Neil, without giving away the surprise we are working on, and without revealing the name or anything, one of the things we're going to do is do something special with a crossword puzzle down the road.
Absolutely.
Right? So no surprise revelation here, but everyone who loves crossword puzzles should stay tuned to our shows in the weeks ahead, because we're going to do something that will knock your socks off.
Yep.
Follow the hashtag NYT Read Along for updates. We do the show weekly, every week at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Sree is the host of the show. When he's not available, I step in as the guest host. Otherwise, I'm the executive producer. Paula Kiger and Steve Taylor are always helping. And we will keep bringing interesting guests and interesting conversations to your door.
Where did you come all the way in from and save?
It drove in from DC last night.
This is a real buddy, man.
Thank you.
He came in and he did an amazing job.
He drove in at midnight last night. So
wait,
we should also give a shout out to our spouses who led the family. Please, you start with yours.
Special shout out to Pam, my wife, who's not on social media, so I can't tag her anywhere. But one of the things that we should acknowledge is that the New York Times Read Along is a labor of love. It's a passion project. But it takes us away from our families on Sunday mornings, whether we're at our kitchen table or here at the museum. And there's a lot of prep, a lot of time that we spend during the week. So thank you to our families that help us do this work. Steffen,
Hazel, thank you for everything you do, with our son and taking care of things when I'm flipping French toast in the morning and listening to Sree at the same time and trying to help out in other ways. And quickly, of course, Rupa. The famous Rupa, Rupa Online, find her. And one final thing I just want to really quickly, I'm sorry because it's important, I want to give a big shout out to all the organizations and certain people that I've worked with quickly that have done so much working with them. AARP's Life Reimagined platform, Emilio Pardo, also Encore.org, and Marcy Albahor and Mark Friedman and Eunice Nichols. And the Pulitzer Prizes, of course, Dana Kennedy. Thank you, Dana. It's an honor working with you. And look forward to it again this year and everything else. But, just amazing stuff. And thank you so much to everybody who's been so supportive.
Follow him at Spin It Social.
At Spin It Social.
And what's your
At
email
Sree.
in case somebody wants to contact?
SpinItSocial@gmail.com.
So all platforms.
And Steffen Kaplan on LinkedIn. Spin It Social even on Facebook. Steffen Spin It Social. Sree Srinivasan. Sree all across the board. And Neil Parekh. Parekh.
Wonderful.
And we are leaving you from the Museum of the City of New York.
Yeah, awesome. I want to give a shout out to the team here and leave you with this incredible quote from Abraham Lincoln. I like to see a man proud of the place in which he lives. I like to see a man live so that his place will be proud of him. Abraham Lincoln. What a quote. And what a wonderful way to end this special edition of the Read Along. Thank you to Whitney Donhauser and the team here. We're so grateful. And thank you to our friend just off camera who sacrificed her Sunday morning to be here with us and to participate and help make this possible. And I'm just going to turn the camera around here. Great comments coming in right here. And we can see Park in the back.
That's right.
Thank you.
Crown jewel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sree, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And we'll see you again next Sunday. Every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, we'll be doing this. And don't forget, in 3 Sundays, we have a very special show for you with the New York Times travel editor, Amy Vershup. Follow her on Twitter at Amy VIRSHUP. January 12th. You do not want to miss this. We're coming to you live from her home in New York City, and it's going to be absolutely incredible. So do check that out. Happy New Year to everybody. Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas to everyone who celebrates. And thank you all for an incredible year. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Come visit the museum.
Yes, come visit the Museum of the City of New York. Bye-bye, everybody. And Neil, anything else, or just say goodbye?
No.
You're going to kill the camera.
Yeah. First lunch today to all of us.
Yep. Okay, kill it.
Kill it. We're out of